Hello and welcome to the third instalment of me taking out pretty much everything in the van, it seems, and making it so that the van is gas-free. And for my overseas viewers, by gas I mean actual gas, propane, not gas petrol. And the reason I'm doing this, I was going to explain this when I put the electrics in, but I can see that being still some way off. And people keep saying, why are you doing this? So let me tell you. I'm doing it for several reasons. Firstly, a few months ago I had a tiny gas leak, which my LPG detectors picked up and beeped, and I thought there's something wrong here, and I used my little gas sniffer and I found that one of the little joints on the pipework needed about 1/8 of a turn to tighten it up a little bit more. It must have just come loose over the years of driving the van around, I think. So although I caught it and the detectors found it, that unnerved me slightly, and I thought I don't really like the idea of gas potentially leaking. It's always unnerved me, whether it was on the boat or in the van, and I thought, wouldn't it be nice to have a vehicle without explosive propane in it? Secondly, there's just the interest of doing it. The whole van project for me was not just so I could have a camper van, but also to be a DIY project, to see what could I do, because I'm hopelessly inept, really, and this is certainly the biggest kind of thing I'd ever done, fitting out a camper van. And having done it, that didn't mean the end of the project, but refitting it and doing new tweaks to it and modifying it, it's all part of the fun, for want of a better word. It never feels like fun, but it kind of is. It's interesting to say, well, what would it be like if I did this? So part of the reason for taking all the gas out and replacing it with a massive lithium battery and a big inverter and an induction cooktop is just for the sake of seeing, can I do it? What's it like? And isn't it an interesting DIY project? So you might argue, well, it's ridiculous. You're doing perfectly well with gas. There's a good reason why people have gas in their vans. It's nice and easy to use, blah, blah, blah. I know, but I quite fancy having a go with just doing this as another DIY project. So that's what it's all about. Now, it's a sort of sunny day, a bit chilly, but I thought I'd come out and get on with the next stage. I have received the diesel heater. This is what I've been waiting for, because the next thing to do is put the diesel heater in where the old propane heater was. I've received that, and now I need to go about putting that in. But before I do that, I just need to clear the van of all the stuff that I've taken out. For example, I still have here the hob and sink unit. As you can see, it is upturned. That is available for sale, by the way, both the hob and sink, the Propex HS2000 heater with its control unit, and the Gaslow refillable gas cylinder, all still available for sale. I've only made a half-hearted attempt to sell them, really. I posted a thing on Twitter. Anyway, I've put a page up on my website detailing what I've got for sale and what the price is. So if you're in the UK and you want some bits for a van build, I've left a link to that in the video description below. Right, I need to clear these out of the way so I've actually got some space to work. Right, space has been made by virtue of dumping the things in my lounge, which will now annoy me for weeks and weeks until I sell them. You'll notice I still have that cable connected from the heater. Thank you to the very many people who have suggested how I can get that white end off by pressing some little metal bits and pulling the wire out. That will be immensely helpful. I am going to do that. However, first of all, this is the new heater. It is an Autoterm, aka Planar, and yes, I know some folk will say, oh, they're made in Russia, how could you? Well, they're actually made in Latvia, and I could because I've seen the teardowns on YouTube of some of the cheap Chinese diesel heaters, and I do not like the look of some of them, frankly. And if anyone knows how to make a heater that works in cold weather, it should be Planar, if they're making them in Russia or Latvia or wherever. Now, I'm rather hoping, look, it's got an actual exhaust pipe on it. The old HS2000 gas one never had an exhaust silencer on it. I'm hoping that this will pretty much just drop in place. Come on, camera, focus. Hoping it'll just drop in place and be a relatively straight swap, albeit with the addition of all the diesel pipe work. Well, I knew I was going to change this arrangement anyway, but nonetheless, the first mild disappointment is that you can quite clearly see that the holes I used to have for the HS2000 are much further apart than the ones for the Planar. However, I was going to change this anyway, and take this wood off. I've got a metal mounting plate that should hopefully fit across here, so I need to chop out a bit of this. And it looks like I just screwed this plate on with some screws, so hopefully those can come out and this will lift off. Also, I'm just trying to remember how I fastened this top on, because I can see that that is not, I didn't put any glue on it, it seems, because that will bend, which must mean that I screwed into it from underneath. And if you come up this end, there's this wooden bit here, and if we look underneath, this may not be visible, but yeah, you can possibly just about see there are some screws going up, so I think I must have screwed that in place. So possibly this whole worktop will come off if I can find where I screwed it in. For this I'm going to need a screwdriver, so let's go and get some tools. This is the mounting plate. I don't think it's an official one, it's one I got off some seller on eBay, but it's got the holes drilled. And I need to make the wood, cut the wood so that that kind of goes there-ish. Roughly where the old heater was, but drilled in there. Right, let's get the old top of this off. Get this off first, and I can work out how I'm going to fit that thing. One. The screws are all out, but I inexplicably screwed this angle bracket thing, not screwed, glued this angle bracket thing in for reasons unknown. And that glue is very solid glue. I couldn't film it as I had to use both hands, but brute force pried that off. So now this is free, so I can bring it out and either use it to mount the mounting plate to, or just put it out the way and at least remind myself how I did this. Now, where's that metal mounting plate? So that's going to go something like that. Right, what I think I need to do is take this piece of wood away and cut out a hole underneath it while leaving enough still to make some screws through there to hold it in place. It had to be a funny shape with the Propex heater because it was a bit fat, but the Autoterm one is not so fat. So I think I could probably, if I wanted to, continue this edge and chop that sticky out bit off and then just put that like that. So I think that is what I will end up doing. Incidentally, I don't know if you can see, but I have managed to push those metal bits back as everyone advised using a tiny screwdriver. Just push them down and backwards. Sorry about the focusing, the camera won't do a very good job on that. And then these start to emerge out the back, so I should be able to pull that connector off and get the wire out without demolishing everything. Thank you everyone for the suggestions. Ta-da! 'Tis off. Hopefully I can now pull that wire through without having to make any cuts. That is the old controller to the old Propex heater. I have pulled the cable as far as here, but the little clump of connectors, and you probably can't see, but that is actually, the multicoloured connectors are just there, but the hole in this bit of wood is just too small for them to pull through, so for the sake of that I can't get it out, so I'm going to have to drill this bit of wood off a bit. I don't know why I put this bit of trim here particularly. It's not like I actually covered up all this. So I'm going to have to get this off to get that wire out. You know, on closer inspection, even if I get it through here, it's still not going to go through here. And I don't want to cut this because this is a support strut. I don't quite know what it's supporting, but there's a screw in the top and there's a screw further down. It's holding... I don't want to cut through this to get that wire through. So I think actually what I'm going to have to do, having done all that, is just cut the wire and then remake the connector. As the controller for the new heater is not the same shape as that, I'm going to have to camouflage that somehow because, well, even if I put the new controller over the top of it, it won't look right. So I'll just have to get a bit of plywood, stain it up the same and stick it over the top, I think. Yep, okay. I think that's it. It is. Rather to my surprise, I don't seem to have put any screws down the back there, which would have been a pain to get to because there's an electrical conduit down there as well. No, this is now free, which means I can use it as a template for a new worktop, which is great. And it means access to putting the heater in will be much better. Oh yes, much better access now, both for refitting that bit of wood down there and doing the wiring. And also I wanted to slightly refit the water system as well. So it's all good. Now just doing a little test fitting here, and the good news is that I can squeeze the high temperature silicone junction that has the existing exhaust pipe. It will squeeze onto the exhaust pipe of the new heater. Strangely, the same is not true of the air inlet pipe, but that one's less critical. That one only had a junction on it just to make it bend the right way, and that's not so much of a problem. But that is good, as it means I can use the existing double lagged, there it is, the one with the red round it. That's actually got 2 layers of insulation around it, that exhaust pipe. So I can just reuse that where it sits. That is good news. Right, now with the heater there, I've squished it onto the exhaust pipe and it is comfortable there. It could pull a little bit further there, but I'm getting a bit of spring back off the exhaust. So there is a very comfortable spot. So what I need to do is measure how far it is from there so that I can make sure I cut the space for the mounting place correctly, the mounting plate. This was looking like it was going well, with the plate mounted to the thing, but that is the exhaust hole, and it's just a little bit too close to comfort to that wood strut for my liking, and that's where it has to be, so I'm going to have to remove that wood strut. Darn it! Right, what I'm going to do is take my cutter thing, slice that apart. Now that was a strengthening brace, so I will slice it apart and then I'll put it across those two to try and maintain some of the strength. Well, we apologise for the earlier wobbling. due to the vibration of the multi-tool. However, I cut the piece and I have glued and screwed it across that way instead. As you can see, the drill is now doing double duty as a holding in place tool. And in fact I don't need the drill, do I, because having put this board back down, that is going to hold that one in place, and I can now screw this back in, which means that that mounting thing is absolutely ready for the heater to go on top. Remember, the heater is separated from that metal plate by a rubber mat on the bottom of the heater itself, and around the exhaust outlet I do have the high temperature silicon blue thing, plus then heat exhaust wrap, plus then the red further heat exhaust wrap. So it's all very well insulated, with big air gaps as well as insulation. And thusly will we have one heater resting on its mounting plate, with a little rubber mat between it and the mounting plate, and then the air inlet and exhaust as before. Right, well, to be frank, that's enough for today. I realise this probably seems interminable to you, but rest assured it seems interminable to me as well. I'll be back when I can gather my strength for the next phase. Cheerio!